Live from the DLD studios at Fort Sam Houston, Texas, it's MedCom Money Matters with your host, Alex Smart.
Thank you. All right. Thank you. Now today we're going to look at government purchasing and common fiscal mistakes. Fiscal mistakes can violate the purchasing regulations and statutes, and that's putting you and your organization at risk. So let's take a closer look at the top 10 misconceptions about using government funds. All right, folks, number 10, purchasing from the GSA Advantage website, Supplies R Us, the guy down the street, who knew there was a difference? Number 9, so you're saying I can't buy the chrome 32-inch wheels for the Humvee. Number 8, it was either make 2 purchases with 1 card or cut my credit card in half. Number 7, so get this, the oxygen tank costs over $3,000, but I'm not going to use canned air. Number 6, gloves, check. Scrubs, check. Bieber tickets, check. Bieber tickets? Number 5, even though I don't have quite enough funds, I still went ahead and made the purchase. Not the boss of me. Number 4, who knew funds expired at the end of the year? They aren't milk. Guess we're going to have to go and buy some staples. Number 3, I have all this money and need to use it before the end of this fiscal year. I'm fixing to stockpile some staples. Number 2, since we can't use government funds to pay for food, I'll buy anything you're selling as long as you tie a stake to it. And finally, the single biggest misconception in government purchasing? Who knew money came in different colors? It ain't Skittles. So there you have it, folks, the top 10 misconceptions about using government funds. Now, when we come back, I'll have a guest with me who's going to walk us through some of his fiscal mistakes. We'll be right back.
Have you ever been given the responsibility of spending someone else's money? What if you'd been given the responsibility to spend the U.S. government's money? Would you know when you could spend the money, how much you were allowed to spend, or even what you were allowed to spend it on? All that information is available to you in several sources. Introducing Fiscal Guidelines. Fiscal guidelines include the Anti-Deficiency Act, the Federal Acquisition Regulation, and the Joint Ethics Regulations, among others. Together, they provide you, the government employee entrusted to spend the taxpayer dollars, with the know-how to avoid common fiscal law and ethical mistakes. As you prepare to execute your budget, the fiscal guidelines explain that the annual DoD appropriations will identify DoD services spending limits. Want to know when you can obligate or spend funds and how much? Congress approves DoD appropriations to be used during a fiscal year. Your comptroller or resource manager will let you know when the funds have been distributed to your organization. Have a question about what services you can accept? Contact your local resource or financial manager, or contact your servicing legal or contracting office about the different types of contracts and documentation that may be required. And remember, all DoD appropriations provide spending limits, and the services further restrict spending to ensure funds are used legally and efficiently throughout the year. The fiscal guidelines provide you with the information you need to avoid committing Anti-Deficiency Act or other fiscal or ethical violations.
All right, welcome back. My guest today is a man who's broken a few of the fiscal rules, and he's here to share his experiences with us. Please welcome to the show, Barry Culp. How you doing today, Barry?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on the show.
Of course.
Really appreciate it. But I gotta say, I really take offense at something you said to me earlier.
Well, what's that?
Well, the fact that I've broken the rules. You know, I may have stretched the rules or bent the rules, but I've never actually broken a rule.
Okay, Barry, you know what? If that helps you sleep at night, fine. But the ADA, the regs, they're not there to be bent, broken, stretched, cracked, fractured, splintered, or anything else you might want to do to them.
You have your limits and I got mine.
Okay. Well, now, Barry, we brought you here to discuss your fiscal role. Let me ask first, have you taken any training?
Oh, sure. Been there, done that, got the T-shirt. Everybody has to go to training before they start purchasing.
Okay, what exactly are you purchasing?
Well, mainly I buy office supplies, you know, pens, pencils, papers, things like that. It's a pretty straightforward process, but, you know, sometimes you got to work the system.
Work the system?
Yeah, for example, this one time I went to the Lighthouse for the Blind to pick up some office supplies, and they didn't have the pens my first sergeant wanted. So I just went off post to Supplies R Us and picked them up.
Actually, that sounds pretty reasonable. I don't see how that could be any sort of violation.
Well, I should have used the approved sources or the BPAs. If I had just bought the pens off the correct websites, I would have avoided a write-up and retraining. It's a good thing my approving official caught the purchase and I was able to return the pens. Otherwise, it would have come out of my paycheck.
Well, luckily for you, it was pens and not something like, say, tanks. You wouldn't have to come out of pocket too much for those.
Yeah, not on that one, but I had to purchase these unit coins one time. My commander asked me to purchase some, and I read somewhere that it was okay as long as they were used for awards. Well, then he came to me and he said, I'd like you to get some extras so I can swap them with visiting commanders. I figured, well, he's my boss, so I went ahead and bought them.
Oh, wait a sec. Are you saying that you can't use government funds to purchase unit coins? I see military members with those all the time. What's wrong with buying with government funds?
They're okay for awards, but when my commander decided to swap them, they became a personal item. You see, my commander swapped one with a contracting commander and somehow let it slip that we used government funds to purchase them. Well, the contracting commander reported us and I got left holding the bag. Now, it's a good thing my commander decided to pay for half the cost, but I got stuck with the other half. Boy, those things are expensive.
Yeah, well, you know what? It sounds like they hit you right where it hurts.
Yeah, I was on a ramen diet for a few months after that.
You know what? You're lucky that your commander even paid for half of it, because you should know that as the person who is responsible for purchasing, ultimately you're the one that the government's going to look for.
Yeah, but sometimes I get pulled into other people's mistakes. Like one time these 4 NCOs and I decided to buy some t-shirts for a recruiting drive. Now we all had our own GPCs, but we were under the same billing official. Well, when the NCO IC decided to purchase the t-shirts, he found out they were going to exceed the $3,000 micro-purchase threshold. So he went ahead and split the purchase 5 ways. I didn't exceed my micro-purchase threshold, but we all got in trouble because he split it 5 ways.
So splitting a purchase is a big no-no.
Right. You can't take a known requirement and split it into multiple orders in order to avoid getting a contract or exceeding the $3,000 micro-purchase threshold. When contracting found out that's what he did, they made us return all the t-shirts and put them on a contract. Got more training for that one.
Okay, now I'm curious. It's $3,000 for a single or a micro purchase. Are there any other thresholds we should be aware of?
Well, sure, there's all kinds of them, but who can remember them all?
Well, can't you just look them up when you need them?
Yeah, but that's 5 minutes of my life that I'll never get back. Ain't nobody got time for that.
But I'll tell you what, man, it's better 5 minutes than 5 years. Although you would meet some very interesting people during those 5 years. Now, because you seem to be an expert on threshold violations, I'm going to assume that you have another example for us.
Well, as a matter of fact, I do. I had this respirator one time that was broken in the ER. And so I had a repairman come in and look at it, and he said it was going to cost $2,800 to fix it. So I went ahead and told him to fix it. Had to get repaired.
And the service purchase threshold limit's $2,500, right?
Well, I know that now, but at the time, I forgot that services had their own threshold. If you ask me, a respirator's pretty important, but apparently not important enough to violate the service threshold because I got another write-up and retraining for that one.
More training? Why is it that you're still making this many mistakes?
Well, it's kind of easy to tune out after you've been to training for what, the 3rd, 4th, 5th time.
When you said you had a t-shirt from training earlier, you meant you an entire drawer full of t-shirts. I mean, wow. Here's what I want you to do, okay? Do this for me. I want you to go home. I want you to grab yourself a mirror, look into that mirror, and I want you to practice this phrase over and over and over again until you get it, because it's probably going to save you on your next job. Do you want cheese on that?
Well, I'll tell you one thing I did learn on retraining is don't buy bottled water with government funds. You see, I picked up a few cases for office guests and I got hammered by contracting. They said that the bottled water was a personal item because the bank's water was drinkable.
Well, why would you use government funds to buy a personal item like bottled water when the water on post is A, free, and B, certified to drink? Let me guess. This particular water that you bought, this one gives you some sort of superpower, like, say, X-ray vision or something.
Hey, I was just trying to make the place look a little bit nicer, class it up a bit. How did I know that my personal preference would be considered a personal item?
The word personal and personal preference is probably a dead giveaway.
Well, let me tell you, this one's not personal by any means, and I still took a beating. You see, I was a COR on a 10K contract for a study on how to improve the effectiveness of the behavioral health services. The contract was going great, but right at the end, the contractor came up and said they needed another 3K to get the job done. I knew it had to get finished, so I told him to go ahead and do it. Well, when I tried to present the bill to DFAS for payment, they wouldn't accept it. They said it wasn't on the original contract. And I had to go through the ratification process for that. Boy, was that a headache.
Come on, Barry. Why would you spend money you don't have? You're committing the government for purchases that you don't have the authority to pay for. What were you thinking?
Well, I just thought they could take the money from somewhere else.
Yeah, they're going to take the money from you. I mean, the rules for spending government funds are very specific. You can't spend the money wherever or whenever you want.
Well, yeah, to tell you, I really learned that whenever part. You see, I had this instructor that was scheduled for training in FY11. And one day she came to me and she was really excited because she said that if she registered in FY10, that she would get a discount on the training. So I told her to go ahead and register using FY10 funds.
But Barry, that violates the time limit for obligating your FY10 funds.
Well, I was just trying to save Uncle Sam some money by having her register at the lower rate.
But you use FY10 funds to pay for an FY11 requirement.
Yeah, I know that now, but at the time I thought it was okay. Boy, was she upset with me when I told her she had to cancel her training because I used the wrong year's money to pay for it.
Shocker. I mean, did you do anything to make it up to her?
Well, sure I did, but then I got into even more trouble because I used government funds to do it. You see, she needed staples.
Hold on, wait, right there, Barry. My producers actually found footage of you making this purchase. Let's watch. Why?
Hey, she needed staples. I got her staples.
But 200 boxes? You basically fulfilled a future requirement with this year's fund because there is no way that's a bona fide need. Now, if you had purchased a few to keep in stock and what she needed, then maybe you'd be okay. But 200 boxes? I mean, when you were making that purchase, what point did you stop and think to yourself, yeah, this is an outstanding use of government funds?
Well, I didn't think so, but my resource manager, when he saw me walking in the building with all those staples, he made me turn around and take them all back except 10 boxes. I don't think they like me very much at the Lighthouse for the Blind these days.
You think?
Yeah, but you know who does like me?
Yeah, a board auditor looking for something to do.
No, pharmaceutical reps. Whenever they're in town, they take me out for dinner and they pick up the tab. All I've got to do is listen to their spiel and promise to buy their products. Works for me.
Yeah, it would work for you. It's completely unethical.
Hey man, if it's free, it's for me. They even bring pizza into the MTF.
That is a direct violation of the no pizza rule. I mean, when it comes to food, Barry, you really should be paying your own way. You remember that old dating strategy you used to use.
Hey, you might see it that way, but I think it's A-OK.
Well, you know who probably doesn't think it's A-OK? It's the AMED legal team. Now, I heard that you are currently under investigation. Can you tell us about that?
Do we really have to talk about that? The investigation's not even finished yet.
I really think we need to talk about that. I mean, we really need to give our audience as much information as possible. Now, from what I understand, you are being investigated for violating the color of money rule. I'm assuming that means that you used the wrong type of funds?
That's what they're saying, but here's what really went down. I started modernizing the computer systems in our office using O&M funds since it was going to be under $250K. Well, while I was doing that, I saw all of these other system options that would really improve the performance of the system. Since I already had a contract in place, I went ahead and added them to the contract. That brought the modernization cost up to about $400K.
That sounds like an impressive system.
Yeah, let me show you. This is really, really an impressive system. Take a look at that. What do you think about that? Now, to really get the performance out of this system, I had to do a little tweaking to the software. So I went ahead and added another $50K to the contract for software development. And I mean, this thing really hums now. Pretty sweet, isn't it? I think it's awesome.
Well, you know what? I'm hearing $50,000, $250,000, $400,000. I mean, Barry, you've mentioned some enormous ticket prices here. Do you know exactly why you're being investigated?
I don't know. What do I look like, a lawyer?
Not unless Play School's giving out law degrees. But, you know, we happen to have someone with us who actually is familiar with these types of investigations. Please welcome to the show, live via satellite, Joe Topinka. How you doing today, Mr. Topinka?
Thanks for having me, Alec. Well, Barry, to sum up your issue, you used the wrong type of money. Here, you have a system modernization that included purchase of hardware and then software development. Two separate matters. First, the computer purchase could have used O&M funds, but you went over the investment threshold of $250,000. So you should have used procurement funding. Second, you wanted to develop new software, and that fell into the RDT&E funding arena, not O&M. Your problem's not only developed because you kept increasing the total amount for modernization, but then you added software development to the mix. Always remember that in any IT effort, the underlying purpose for each discrete task within that effort determines the correct appropriation for budgeting that IT task. These situations can be confusing, and you should have obtained written advice from your resource manager and legal counsel first. Really, if you would have simply approached the MedCom Defense Business Certification Office in the first place, all this trouble could have been avoided from the start. No doubt IT acquisition can be very confusing, and the proper approaches have been changing over the years. Ask first in this arena, always, as the alternative can lead to anti-deficiency violations and reports to Congress and the President, something we do not want to see in the MedCom. Again, the best place to start in these situations is the MedCom Defense Business Certification Office. They can provide all the necessary IT governance prior to execution.
Well, I didn't know about all of that.
Sorry, Barry, but that's not an excuse. You know that ADA investigation you mentioned earlier? Well, it has been completed.
What does that mean for me?
You could be looking at a suspension from duty, some hefty fine payments, or even possible jail time. But we'll talk more about that after the show. Well, thanks for having us today, Alec.
Thanks for stopping by there, Joe. And Barry, well, good luck to you. While we enjoyed having Barry on our show today and shared a few jokes, ADA violations are no laughing matter. Poor judgment puts the Surgeon General at risk and reflects poorly upon MedCom commanders. Barry will face the consequences for violating ADA and purchasing regulations. Hopefully, hearing today's stories on the top 10 misconceptions about using government funds will prevent you from making the same mistakes as Barry. And that's our show for today. See you next time, MedCom community.